Montgomery County Intermediate Unit has been approved provider to provide Act 48 professional development credit hours for those with Pennsylvania teaching or administrative certificates. You have to stay for the entire session to get your Act 48 or Act 45 credits from me. You will get a sticker at the end. Please silence all of your phones and please help me welcome Dr. Laura Beal, and we will get started.
Nice. Welcome. Good morning. So I did say as we're walking in, I have a few websites I'm going to take you to today to show you infographics around STEM research. So if you have a device, you probably want to have it out. If you don't have it, it's not a big deal, but some of the numbers and figures are pretty small, so you have it in front of you. So welcome to What Does the Research Tell Us About STEM Education? So I want to give this disclaimer at the beginning of the presentation. So this was probably the hardest presentation I've ever prepped for, because if you know anything about educational research, there is so much research out there that supports and defies both sides of any issue. STEM is just in that same category. There is a lot of research out there, but there's not a lot of definitive results around whether or not STEM improves student learning or doesn't. So hopefully my session today will give you a little bit of background, but also probably gives you more questions than answers. My name is Lauren Beal, and I am the STEM supervisor at Lancaster Lebanon Intermediate Unit. I have a team of 3 STEM consultants where we each have different expertise in different STEM areas. So together we really have a holistic approach to STEM education. So to get us started today, I have my session broken into 3 sections. I want to talk a little bit about why STEM is important and really focus on some of the workforce projections around STEM. I want to talk about STEM skills that employers are saying students need in order to fill those high-demand, high-paying jobs. And then I also want to talk a little bit about some of the research we've done at IU13 around integrative STEM education, because I think that our professional development plan is something that could be replicated in various settings and with similar results. So to get started today, why STEM? So STEM is definitely a passion of mine. If you think about American history, it's rooted in STEM innovation. So think about in our history what we've done. So we've put a person on the moon, we've put a rover on Mars. We have developed a computer that will fit into your pocket. We have decoded the human genome, developed the internet, harnessed the power of an atom. All of that is because of STEM education and STEM innovation. So we as a nation, it's critical for our students and our next generation to have those STEM skills for various reasons. So that's a lot of pressure for us as educators. So how can we develop really strong STEM programs that will equip our next generation to continue the innovation that we have as a nation? So the National Academy for Engineers pulled together engineers from across the planet to really dig into what are our most pressing issues that students or our next generation will need to solve. So they identified 14 what they call grand challenges that are looped into 4 big buckets: sustainability, healthcare, national security, and just quality of life. So I find that those 14 grand challenges should really be the foundation of what we do with STEM education. Okay, these are research-based challenges, so if we're looking at giving kids real-world context for learning, those 14 grand challenges are where it's at. This comes from the website engineeringchallenges.org, and it gives a really nice overview of those 14 grand challenges. So I really encourage educators to base their STEM programs around those challenges to give real-world authenticity to the learning experience. So what does the research tell us about our STEM workforce? And I don't think any of this is going to be new, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, but I just want to review some of the data and research around STEM occupations and future projections around STEM. So all of the information I'm going to share with you comes from a 2017 report from the U.S. Department of Labor Statistics. Now you might say 2017. This is the most recent comprehensive report. If you go to the website, they do have more information, but this is a comprehensive report nationally on STEM skills. So what they found is nearly 8.6 million STEM jobs existed in 2015, and that number continues to grow. And if you look, the blue is computer occupations and engineering. As I'm going to show you as we look at future projections, those percentages continue to grow. So I ask you, as a system, are you providing learning opportunities for your students around computer science and engineering if we have the majority of STEM occupations in those fields? 7 out of 10 of the largest STEM occupations are computer related. So again, does your system have some sort of system in place to provide students with skills around computer science and coding? Because even if they don't get into a computer science occupation, those are skills that are needed for almost anything that they're going to do. 93 out of 100 STEM jobs had wages over the national average. So this is the US mean average. You can see the purple are things like engineers, architects, computer management systems, all above the national average for wages. So let's look at job projections. So in this report from the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, from 2014 to 2024, these are the current trends around workforce demands. And you'll see math, science, and what I found really interesting is the second highest growing occupation is around STEM educators. And if you think about that very first slide where I showed you all of the innovation that we have done as a nation and how important it is for our students to continue that pattern of innovation, we need STEM teachers to be equipping students with those skills. So as we dig deeper into STEM occupations, computer science is going to be huge. Engineering, huge. Life science, huge. And if we go back to those grand challenges, it should make sense. If these are what people who are in the field say are our biggest challenges as a planet, if you think back to those job projections, it kind of makes sense. Life science, think about our food shortage. That's a serious concern. Our quality of our water, that's huge. Our urban infrastructure, those are huge jobs that really align with what the engineers are telling us are our biggest needs. So again, back to the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they found that science occupations, or STEM occupations, are growing at a rate of about 18.7%, where all other jobs are about 14.3%. So I don't think this is anything new. I just think it's important to continue to keep that in our minds. Are we providing our students with STEM experiences that will equip them to enter these high-growing, high-paying careers? So let's take it local. Actually, before we do that, just one other thing that I think is important to note is we just looked at all those job projections, but we haven't broken it down by demographics. Unfortunately, still women are underrepresented in our STEM careers. We make up over 50% of the workforce, yet you can see in STEM careers, our numbers are very small. When we look at underrepresented populations, whites and Asians continue to dominate the STEM workforce at an astronomical percentage. So again, it's just something to consider when we're looking at our STEM programs. If those job statistics are accurate and those projections are accurate, how do we better promote STEM programs within our systems and our schools to get women and underrepresented populations into those careers? So the National Association of College and Employers is one of the best researchers with looking at post-grads and what careers they get into. And so what they found is through extensive interviews of employees and graduates, these were the most popular, attributes to future employers. So when they looked at what skills do employers look for, number one was problem solving, ability to work for a team, and communication. And I share this research with you because even if your students are not in pursuing STEM degrees or STEM careers, all of those attributes are accomplished through STEM programs. So are we at least providing students with STEM opportunities to grow those skills? So regardless of what they do, they're equipped for success. All right, so let's take it local now to STEM in Pennsylvania. I'll give you a second to read the slide, and I'll highlight just a few numbers. Anybody surprised by anything up there? 17,000 unfilled CS-related jobs in our state. That's crazy. How do we get our students exposed to computer science so that they want to fill those careers? There are 300,000 jobs related to STEM. This is just in our state alone. 8% of our job growth is around STEM careers, whereas all other jobs are growing at about 4% rate. And again, I can't highlight this enough. Computing is one of the fastest growing, highest paying careers in our state. All right, so let's dig deeper into Pennsylvania and how our students are doing around STEM. So 2 of the most recent reports on STEM education that I would highly encourage you to download. 2018, in December, so the very end of 2018, the White House released Charting a Course for Success, Strategies Around STEM Education. This is the most recent comprehensive national STEM report that's been released. So I would highly encourage you checking that out, and I'll highlight some of the statistics from that report. Another important one is from the National Science Board, 2018 STEM Indicators. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, but there is a lot of information in there that I would encourage you to explore after today's session. So I want to just highlight a few national statistics before we get back to our local. Across our nation, less than half of our 4th, 8th, and 12th grade students are proficient. And that's according to the NAEP Math and Science assessments. I don't think that this is new, but we continue to have performance disparities in our underrepresented populations. And again, I don't think that this is new, but it's important to highlight. Our math assessment scores in the United States are continually lower than other countries. India and China continue to outpace us when it comes to STEM innovation. And I go back to that first slide about how important it is as a nation for us to continue to harness STEM skills locally so that our students are equipped to be solving those problems. But right now, it's not looking so great. We only have about 10% of science and engineering graduates on a global platform. So what I'd like for you to do is if you could please go to this website, and if you don't have a device near you, if you just want to kind of look beside somebody who does. vitalscience.ecs.org is an awesome resource from the Education Commission around STEM nationally, but also state by state. What I like about this website is it provides really effective infographics that I think are really easy to share with your staff, your boards, your students. Give me a second to get there. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like you to click on Vital Signs. So I'm under Research, Vital Signs. You have the option to explore STEM by state or explore STEM nationally. We're going to do the state in a minute, but I'd like you to click on Explore STEM nationally. And I'd like you just to take a minute and explore some of the infographics on just this page alone. Okay, and I want you to find one takeaway to describe STEM nationally according to these infographics. I'm going to be quiet for a minute, give you time to explore the website.
I'm sorry, can you put the link back up?
Sure, sorry. who was able to check out some of these infographics and learn more about the trend, was there anything that was alarming to you or interesting to you that you maybe never thought of before? Yeah.
I noticed here that it says United States 8th graders who science teachers actually have an undergraduate degree in science. So less than 50% of our 8th graders are actually taught by actual science.
Yep, great point. Any other takeaways from the infographics? Yeah.
I think the equity piece that we constantly hear about and making sure that it has access to all and that I think that comes with the motivation to go into, like some of these statistics, we have to do a better job of motivating kids around the dollars behind a career in this area would be.
Right. We're exposing kids to people who look like them and live like them and grew up like them that are now in these high-paying STEM careers is important too. Yeah, what can I say?
I think we have to also have to educate the parent, because there's still that mindset out there that if you don't go to college, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, very true. So what do you think of this website? I think the infographics are pretty good. I found that it's an easy way to share information in a non-intimidating way, but it's pretty powerful. So I want to now break it down into our state. So as you saw on that Vital Signs website, you can search by the national data, you can search by your state. I'm going to just give you the Cliff Notes version of Pennsylvania, but I would highly encourage you to go back in and check out those vital signs for Pennsylvania. But just as we said earlier, Pennsylvania teachers are more likely than their peers in other states to have undergraduate degrees in math. That's actually pretty good, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. We still don't have the majority of our teachers who are highly qualified in math or science or teaching STEM. So the orange line is national, green line is Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania, we've made some progress. We're slightly above the national average for our math scores. It's pretty good. But then when we look at our math scores broken down by race and ethnicity, we see that green are our white students, our black and Hispanics fall below the average of our white students. So how do we start bridging that gap? Now when we look at socioeconomic status, these are our students who are not eligible for free and reduced lunch. These are those that are. Again, we see a huge disparity among our math assessment scores with students of poverty. When we look at, in Pennsylvania, our underrepresented minorities in Pennsylvania who are earning computer science degrees. Okay, I think I hit home pretty hard in those statistics about how many jobs are around computer science and how well they pay. When we look in Pennsylvania, these are our number of college-age students. This is our percentage who pursue computer science degrees in underrepresented populations. So we're looking at 11%. Okay, we can do better. All right, so what does the research recommend around STEM? Now this is probably going to lead to more questions, at least it did for me, than answers. But I'll share with you some of the research around student achievement and outcomes related to STEM programs. And I feel like before I get into this, I want to describe what I consider a STEM program. So for me and at IU13, we believe that STEM is an integrative approach to teaching and learning. It's much less about the disciplines of STEM and more about teaching students through real-world context, where they not only learn the disciplines of STEM, but they also learn those soft skills like the 4 C's, how to be problem solvers, critical thinkers, collaborators. So what you'll see in the research is that there is a lot of misunderstanding around what STEM is and what it isn't. And that's what makes the research really, really hard to compare, is different organizations have different views of STEM, and so to really do a meta-analysis where you're comparing study to study is almost impossible. So anyway, decades of research and findings around constructivism support STEM education. And what I learned through my meta-analysis of the STEM research is that a lot of the STEM research is founded in theory and not necessarily practice. And that again goes back to the fact that there's a lot of misconceptions on what STEM is. So why do you think the research is all over the place? So I just said that there's a lot of misconceptions around STEM. Any other ideas? Why is there no really definitive research around the impacts of STEM? Any guesses? What do you think?
The definition of STEM.
Definition of STEM is huge. Why is there a lack of research that's definitive?
Measuring how are we going to measure success?
Yeah. How do we measure success? Is it math and science, PSSA, or Keystone scores? Is that how we determine the success of our STEM programs? How do we measure whether or not a student is growing in the 4 C's?
I would think too, we're talking about careers, so a lot of those studies would have to be like longitudinal.
Yep. So what the research says is that the lack of research is due to multiple understandings of what the word integration means and what STEM means. The fact that students don't develop knowledge in isolation, they develop it over time. So it's really hard to study a specific single factor like STEM education where there are so many other impacts with STEM. The fact that standardized assessments may not be the best measure for STEM. I think STEM impacts go way beyond math and science achievement. And then the fact that we have very few instruments that actually look at integration. And to support what you said about there's very few studies that actually study the impact over time. And really to understand a STEM program, it needs to be studied over time. So the conclusion of lots of studying and research and lots of reading is that there is very little known about how to organize curriculum instruction around STEM. That's just the bottom line. There's very little, and because of all those reasons we spoke about before. What I will share with you is a research study that we've done at IU13 around that, and I'll share with you our local results, but that's just the beginning of the research. So I want to just share with you a couple quotes from some of the meta-analysis that I read, because I think it's just interesting to see, but I will give you the disclaimer, there's nothing that's conclusive and definitive. So, research indicates that using an interdisciplinary integrated curriculum provides opportunities for relevant, less fragmented, and more stimulating experiences for learners. That came from one research study in 2007. Another research study from the National Academy of Engineering found that incorporating engineering had these 4 benefits. It improved students' achievement in math and science, their awareness of engineering, understanding of the engineering design process, and increased their technical literacy. Another research study found there were several benefits to STEM education, making students better problem solvers, innovators, inventors, self-reliant logical thinkers, and more technological literacy. Another research study, which is actually one of the most commonly cited STEM research studies, which crazy enough is from 2001, but it was a meta-analysis of 31 studies where teachers were integrating math and science instruction, and what they found that there was a slight positive effect to math and science scores as a result of the integration of the 2 content areas. But what they also found in this meta-analysis is that the integration that improved conceptual learning really depended on the type of integration that the teacher was doing. So I found this really interesting. So this came from the meta-analysis. What they found is that there's different levels of integration. Okay, so for STEM, sometimes it can be sequential, which means the math and science are planned together. One is taught before the other. And what they found is that that was positive for math, but had no impact on science instruction when it was taught that way. Another level of integration is parallel, which means science and math are planned and taught simultaneously at the exact same time. What the research found is that actually had a negative impact on math and science. If you ask me to explain it, I can't, but that was what the research found. Partial integration, which stated that math and science were taught partially together, but also as their own disciplines and their own classes, made no impact on student achievement. Enhanced integration, which means either science or math was the major discipline, but they lightly integrated the math and the science into whatever the core subject was. So for example, if I was a science teacher, I would teach a unit on science, but I would be weaving in some of the math content. They found that that was positive for science, but had no impact on math class when we had taught math, but tried to integrate some science. And what they found is total integration, which is math and science taught together with equal weight in real world context, was positive for science, but had no impact on math. Kind of interesting, right? Not what I would have expected. So the bottom line through all of that research is that successful STEM integration is largely due to a teacher's understanding of the subject, and unfortunately many teachers have holes in their content knowledge, which then impacts their ability to truly integrate STEM. If you don't have a solid foundation on the content, it makes it really, really difficult to find places where it can naturally integrate in an authentic way. Okay, I think I'm killing you with quotes, but. So, I mentioned this at the beginning of this section. I highly encourage you to go check out this report online and download it. It's a really interesting read from the White House. It provides a lot of information, statistics, but also recommendations around STEM. This came out at the end of 2018. It's one of the most recent studies released around STEM education. And to give you the bottom line, they found 3 important outcomes to the success of STEM. The first is that we need STEM ecosystems. And I'm going to dig into that deeply in a minute. We also need to increase our work-based learning through educator-employer partnerships, and that we need to blend successful practices across the learning landscape. It's pretty broad. So let's get into ecosystems. Just out of curiosity, how many people know that they're part of a ecosystem, a STEM ecosystem? Okay, we have 5 STEM ecosystems in Pennsylvania, soon to be 6. So keep your eyes on April for the announcement. But so we actually have one of the is it the highest? Do we have the most STEM ecosystems? Yeah, that's what I thought. We have the most STEM ecosystems out of any state. And so we're following the research and saying that we can't do STEM in isolation. STEM truly needs to be a partnership. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same philosophy. We need industry involved, we need parents involved, we need schools involved, we need pre-K centers involved, after-school programs. We are not going to improve our STEM data that I shared earlier without an ecosystem approach. And just like an ecosystem is used in life science as like a web of intertwining relationships, we cannot, as educators, just think that we're going to equip our kids for success just in isolation. Okay, so the STEM ecosystems in Pennsylvania have really been trying to make those connections. How many people are recipients of a PA Smart Grant? Okay, so you'll see like they're starting to provide funding to really help you reach out, have business and industry partnerships, get kids out in the field, and show that learning doesn't just happen in our 4 walls in our buildings. So anyway, Pennsylvania is really rocking it when it comes to ecosystems. If you look at our United States, you can see that we're really heavy populated with STEM ecosystems on our side of the United States. Another really interesting research study that I would have you look at is 100K in 10. Anybody familiar with this? So 100K in 10 is an organization that was started under the Obama administration. And what they did is they did extensive needs assessments on STEM in the United States. I remember I was given that survey probably like 5 years ago. So it's not like the survey data was just collected from random people we don't know. Like I'm sure that many of your organizations were given that survey. So they collected data from over 35,000 people. And what they found is that kind of the linchpin for STEM education was teachers. And they found that teachers are lacking the professional development, things like that around STEM, which if we can solve that, it solves a whole host of other problems around STEM. So 100K in 10 has made it their charge to train 100,000 teachers in 10 years to become STEM educators. And what they found, that I found very interesting, is in their research of 35,000 surveys, they found that these issues, all related to teaching, are huge issues when it comes to equipping STEM teachers. Okay, the first is prestige. How do we make teaching a prestigious career that people want to get into? If you are a STEM major, you can make an awful lot more money in any kind of STEM career in industry than you can as a teacher. So how do we improve the prestige of education to get more people into STEM careers or STEM teaching jobs? Preparation. As we talked earlier, very few teachers have degrees in math or science, and then we're expecting them to teach STEM. Okay, the quality of the STEM program really relates to the quality of the teacher's background knowledge around science, technology, engineering, and math. The opportunity for teachers to have professional learning around STEM is small. How can we improve that? And how do we provide materials and resources? So I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I just want to share with you some of the most popular studies around STEM that are kind of intertwined, but I think we're also working to getting there. So that's all the research that's out there, and if you feel like me, I feel like my head was spinning. It's actually more confusing, but I think it gives us a couple charges as educators. It tells us the importance of STEM. It tells us that we really need to provide quality professional development and trainings for our teachers, and that in order to really have an impact on students, we have to have strong STEM integration, and that requires teachers to have a really strong understanding of math and science. So I want to get into research we've done at IU13 because this is something we've been working on for 7 years. We were funded through federal grant math science partnership money to do our own internal research study around educators and STEM. So what we did is we were actually awarded 3 times in a row. So we did a 3-year study, another 3-year study, and then a 2-year study around how we can provide professional development to educators to improve STEM integration locally. So what we did for our personal research study is we did a needs assessment. We looked at the PSSA results in our Lancaster-Lebanon region. We looked at schools that were in school improvement status or Title I status. We looked at PVOS data, and we did a needs assessment where we asked teachers what they needed in terms of professional development. So after our needs assessment, we realized that our math and science scores were all over the place. We had districts in our region whose student proficiency in math and science was below 47%. We found that our teachers had a really confusing perception on what STEM was or a strong understanding of math and science content. We found that teachers really had no idea what integrated STEM looks like and how they do it. And we found that teachers really had a lack of content knowledge around how to engage kids in math and science beyond just following an instructional resource. So what we did is we partnered with several local organizations because, again, that ecosystem approach, we could not provide professional development for teachers without really looking at a networked approach. So we partnered with the Department of Ag, we have a conservation district, our workforce development board, some of our local universities, to really provide a rich professional development opportunity for our teachers. So with our math science partnership funding, we set some goals for ourselves. We really wanted to deepen our teachers' content knowledge around math and science because as we go back to the research study before, teachers have to have a strong understanding of math and science to be able to naturally see where they integrate to do integrative STEM activities. So we wanted to improve our teachers' math and science knowledge. We wanted to better prepare teachers with, deepen their understanding of the standards, but also good STEM practices and pedagogy. We wanted to also help teachers understand how you truly integrate STEM and not just teach the 2 contents in isolation or do arts and crafts and call it STEM. So it was important for us to also have a career awareness component, and so we focused on agriculture simply because we pulled up our workforce statistics. Agriculture is huge in Lancaster and Lebanon County. The majority of our students have some connection to an agricultural career, whether it's a family member or a relative, who knows. But agriculture is huge for us. And so we focused on not only equipping teachers with STEM content knowledge and STEM pedagogy, but we wanted also to expose them to some of the careers in agriculture. Like we have Case New Holland, which is one of the largest agricultural manufacturing facilities in the world. We have it in our backyard. So how do we expose kids to careers in agriculture that go beyond just farming? So what we did is we designed an 80-hour professional development institute. Now why did we pick the 80 hours? Do you remember the keynote yesterday? She talked about some of the research around effective professional development, and there's a lot of research that supports that teachers need at least 80 hours of professional development to truly make a change in practice. And I know 80 hours, when we think about traditionally when we do professional development, it's like 1 day here, 1 day here, 6 hours here, 6 hours here. Really, 80 hours is not easy. So it was important for us to develop an 80-hour institute. So our institute ended up being over the summer because of that high number. We looked at our local PSSA data, and we found that our students were really lacking in the areas of algebraic problem solving and geometry and measurements. And in science on the PSSA, they really struggled with understanding systems and models, water and land. So we based all of our content on our PSSA results and where our students were struggling. We also used the NGSS science and engineering practices as our foundation for our pedagogy, because we found that that creates very good integrative opportunities for students around science and math. And we did all of that under the context of agriculture. So because we were really trying to promote integrative STEM, we asked teachers to come on teams. A teacher could not come by themselves. They needed a team of, and we were looking for a math teacher, a science teacher, a technology and engineering teacher, or if they were an elementary grade level that taught all subjects, we wanted you to bring at least several grade level partners. Because what we have learned is if you attend an 80-hour professional development by yourself and go back into your district, very little changes. So if you have a team that's working together that holds each other accountable, you have more impact. So we looked for teams. We targeted grades K to 8, and that was strategic. We thought if we can equip teachers in the elementary with really strong STEM skills and expose kids to STEM opportunities early, we're better pipelining them into the secondary setting with that foundational skills. And we hope that more kids would then take advantage of STEM opportunities at the secondary level. So we really focused K to 8. Our first year of this project, we had 37 attendees from 10 different districts. So we were pretty proud of that. 2 weeks in the summer is not an easy ask for teachers, especially when they have vacations planned. So we found that it was hard to find that sweet spot and time in the summer that would work to get the most people to attend. But year 2, we almost doubled it. We had 68 attendees and 16 districts represented. We had 22 districts within our IU. So we felt really good that we were getting STEM into the majority of our districts within our region. The other piece I want to comment is administrator agreement to this was critical. We made the administrators for each team come on day 1 of our institute and day 8 of our institute, because without that administrative support, it doesn't matter what they do, it would be really difficult. We needed the administrator to break down the barriers that the teachers had, but also to understand what was happening so that they could better support them as they did it. Integrating STEM is not easy. It takes teacher planning time. It takes a different allotment of resources. It takes thinking creatively, looking at instruction differently. And so it was really important to have an administrator on board. So this will show you an overview of what our Crazy Summer Institute looked like. Because one of our goals was to improve teachers' content knowledge in math and science, we had university professors come in and really run like college courses around math and science for these elementary teachers. There were elementary teachers, we had kindergarten teachers there that I thought were going to break down in tears as they're sitting in these math classes. But for us, it was so important that they develop strong understandings of the content, because as I keep saying, the research shows you can't do STEM integration if you don't understand the content area. So we did college-level math and science classes around those topics I talked about earlier. Algebraic problem solving and geometry, water systems and models. So anyway, we had university professors. We also, what was kind of cool, we spent a lot of time talking about what STEM is. And I'm sorry if I've already said this in some of the other presentations I've given over the last couple days. But we see a lot of what we call STEM washing in Lancaster, which is everything STEM. Kids are doing arts and crafts, it's STEM. Kids are outside, it's STEM. They're doing a poster, it's STEM. And so we have done a lot of work, especially in our research institute, around what is STEM and what is it not. And for it to truly be STEM, it needs to be an integrative approach to teaching. It needs to incorporate not only the 4 disciplines of STEM, but also the dispositions that make for a good student in a real-world context. So breaking down those misconceptions around what STEM is and STEM isn't was a really important part to the beginning of our institute. So what we had teachers do is create a visual that explained their understanding of STEM. That's a really easy activity that you could do with your staff just to start to break those misconceptions. And then the teachers hung them in their classrooms so that, again, it was a nice reminder of getting away from those arts and crafts activities. So during our institute, I said we ran it like a college course. You'll see teachers were doing a lot of work around geometry and reasoning, and everything was in the context of the standards for mathematical practices. So when you're looking at integrating STEM, those practices are critical to making like a good mathematical thinker. Things like making sense of problems and persevering through them, reasoning abstractly, constructing arguments, modeling, attention to precision. Those are all really important practices that we thought were critical when integrating STEM. For science, again, we ran it like a college course, inquiry-based. Everything was founded in the NGSS practices. We also spent a lot of time during our summer institute helping teachers understand the engineering design process. And there's a lot of different engineering design processes out there, but it's a simple system to solve a problem. So we thought it was really important for teachers to understand the importance of the engineering design process, to be incorporating that in all the things they're doing. The engineering design process can happen in an ELA class, okay? It could happen in a history class. It's a problem-solving method, just like the scientific method, that we think is critical to STEM. So we also, as I said earlier, there's a lot of misconceptions and there's not much research on how you truly integrate STEM. So we spent a lot of time with teachers providing examples of what a true integrated STEM activity is. What they're doing here is they're building solar homes that shows evidence of the 4 disciplines of STEM, but it also had a component that required creativity, collaboration, communication, and so forth. That was just one example of an activity that we could connect back to standards, but also the practices. Career awareness was huge for us as well, and so we took the teachers to the Rodale Institute for Organic Farming because we wanted to show them what STEM looks like out in the real world. And so taking them, because our theme was agriculture, this was a research institute where they do a lot of sophisticated research around soil, water, compost. Looking at Rachel, she was there too. And our culminating project, so we had the teachers for 80 hours. We hit them really hard with content knowledge. We hit them really hard with the engineering practices. We hit them really hard with the science and math practices. And we hit them really hard and challenged them at the very end as teams to develop a school-based STEM challenge. We found that if we just did 80 hours of professional development with no accountability at the end or no culminating activity that they could easily use in their classroom, we saw very little impact. So what we did is at the end of the 80 hours, together as a group, they created an integrated STEM activity that had evidence of the standards, student engagement, concept integration, instructional practices, and some form of assessment. So these teams came up with amazing projects to then use in their classroom. We gave them time during the 80 hours to continually build this based on each day of new content, so that by the end of the institute, they didn't need to do anything outside of the school day. It was ready to go. We also had all of our our teachers, as part of the 80 hours, attend STEMathon, which is a STEM conference we host at IU13. The theme last year was or 2 years ago, was It Takes a Community. What was last year? Jobs, careers in STEM, career pathways. So we have them attend a 2-day STEM conference that allows them, after they've now attended 2 weeks with us, they have 2 days to pick and choose sessions at this conference that relate to what they're working on and what they're doing. We also offered teachers 3 additional days of professional development during the school year, where we just kept expanding on the work they did. We offered instructional coaching. We sponsored field trips to our farm show if they were interested. And we also provided extra training on disciplinary literacy in STEM for anybody who wanted to take the project they created and add a writing component and a reading component to that project. So in order to evaluate whether or not our grant actually made an impact, we looked at pre and post assessment data. We had a control group and our intervention group. We did a T-STEM survey, which is a survey that looks at teachers' perceptions on how confident they are delivering STEM integration. We looked at student PSSA scores. We looked at PVAS projections versus what students actually achieved. We used a STEM quality rubric to evaluate the projects that they designed. And we used the RTOP, which is a validated, reliable instrument for monitoring STEM integration in a classroom. So what do you think our results were? Okay, so our results were interesting, and I share them like a little embarrassed, but also because it's the reality of the situation. So 68% of our intervention group, our teachers who did the 80 hours, showed growth in their pre and post test for math. Well, we had hoped it was 100%. Yeah. 59% of our intervention group showed growth in science. Again, we were a little disappointed with that. Our control group did not show any growth between the pre and post test, which was a good thing. And our intervention group scored higher on math and science during the post test than our intervention group. So we feel like we made a little impact on teachers' content knowledge of math and science. I think what we attributed some of those results were, there were kindergarten teachers sitting in these really sophisticated math content, and it was a little overwhelming. I think some of them might have shut down a little bit. So there's a couple reasons that we think to explain it. But overall, we did show some significant growth in math and science content knowledge as a result of our 80 hours. But I think what was interesting for me that was almost more important than those pre and post tests was our intervention group indicated on that STEM quality rubric survey and the T-STEM survey that their confidence in teaching STEM and their awareness of STEM resources improved. We were proud of that. We'll take that. 49% of our intervention group showed an improved gain in understanding STEM pedagogy, which was, we'll take that, that was pretty good. And 0% of our control group showed any growth in STEM pedagogy. So, small wins. So overall, this is the part that was a little disheartening. So we looked at PVAS projections, and we looked to see whether or not students scored on the PSSA what they were projected to score. That was the way we assessed math and science as a result of our institute. So every teacher in our institute who had students with PSSA data, we pulled all their PSSA data and compared it to their PVAS. And unfortunately, what we saw is that there was not a positive impact on student achievement. They pretty much exactly what they were predicted was what they scored. So kudos to the PVAS team. You guys, your stuff is really working. So we found that the PVAS data is extremely accurate. It really does a nice job of predicting what kids will achieve. What we found is that our 80-hour institute didn't have a huge impact on student achievement. So a little bummer, but it wasn't all about the student achievement. So for us, it was more about like what did they actually do with students and how did students grow? Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Did you collect that same data on your control group?
Did we? I feel like we did. We did. I don't think there was any statistically significant change with the control group. So we didn't see like any change in either of the groups. Yeah. So we were bummed, but it's not all about the PSSA scores. So we had some really amazing projects and student experiences as a result of this 80-hour institute. This is one example of a elementary science class that studied hydroponics, and then they created these tower gardens as to fill a hallway that wasn't being used, and they harvested the lettuce and sold it in the school, or not sold it, but they fed it to the students in the school cafeteria. So when we talk about outcomes, like, that's pretty darn cool. And so you can't measure that on a PSSA score necessarily.
We're still seeing the impacts of these projects and the teachers coming back for more professional development, so it really spiked curiosity and interest, not only for the teachers that participated, but also for the students, so.
I think for us, it
Anybody see
also,
the line too, though?
yeah, and so you have to remember, we're looking at just a small population of data. There's a lot of different variables. I still think the model really made some positive impacts. This is an example actually at Mr. Hornberger's school at Expo where they did a STEM night. And so their project was they wanted to engage the entire community. And so there were 3 teachers who attended our institute. Those 3 teachers created a whole school-wide STEM night. They had over 300 people the first year. I don't know what they had last year.
Yeah, it was more.
More, like it just continues to grow through word of mouth. But they created a variety of different STEM challenges that were all connected to standards, and they had families come in and participate. It was amazing. So again, like as bummed as we were about that 1 year of PSSA data, I mean, those are some remarkable results.
Their confidence to try new things and really begin to
Huge.
experiment and redefining learning opportunities.
Here is an example of one of our inner city schools, actually in Harrisburg. And their problem they identified is on the playground. They have this really ugly view of an intersection. And so in order to beautify their school campus, but also they had studied a lot on hydroponics and things, they again created these vertical gardens, taught kids a lot about planting, agriculture, and then they harvested what they grew. Here's another example where kids created I think roller coasters that then, there was math, there was physical science involved, some engineering, and then what they did is they brought in community members and the kids had to actually like explain the science and the math behind all of their projects. So there was a collaboration, a communication piece that was really amazing. Here's another group that learned about composting. This is one of our private schools. So the kids really studied composting. They created a garden, and again, they harvested radishes to sell, or not sell, but to feed in the cafeteria. So based on our personal research at IU13, what have we learned? So we learned that, first of all, elementary teachers crave STEM PD because I think they really want to be doing STEM. They just don't even know how to begin. And so we found that the teachers that attended were super positive and super excited about the opportunity. We found that there are a ton of misconceptions around STEM and what it is and what it isn't. So breaking down those misconceptions was like our #1 job, and I think we did a darn good job of it based on those projects. We also found that if you are going to do a summer institute like this, you need to recruit teachers early, get the date on their calendar, because there were so many teachers who said, oh, we want to come, but that's our vacation week. So I think our numbers would have been much better, but on the downside, you have to do it in the summer if it's 80 hours. It's impossible to pull a teacher out of the classroom for that. We also found some instructional coaching. The research shows that you need 80 hours of professional development and ongoing coaching to truly change practice. We found that the teachers just weren't taking advantage of the instructional coaching. Rachel and I, we have 2 colleagues who also provided instructional coaching. Teachers just didn't seem to want to take advantage. I don't know if it was just the fear of having another adult in your classroom or the judgment. I don't know. We really tried to build relationships that they wouldn't feel that way, but we had very little teachers that took advantage of the STEM coaching. But those who did take advantage of STEM coaching, we saw remarkable results because they were way more confident doing wild and crazy STEM things in their classroom with another adult in the room to help them monitor. And then we also found that you have to have the building administrator on board or the program doesn't work. So I went over tons of workforce statistics. I hope I didn't bore you. Lots of research around STEM that really is inconclusive, and then some research that we've done at IU13 and the results we had. Are there any questions that I can answer for you about all the things we've talked about this morning?
Have you noticed in any of your research if there's any change to teacher training?
Like the type of professional development?
No,
No. Oh.
not professional development, teachers are in the classroom, but teacher training in
Pre-service?
pre-service, thank you, undergrad, undergrad.
I have not noticed any, but I really wasn't focused on that. I know that more and more STEM endorsements are coming out of universities, and we have a lot of graduate students who are taking advantage of the STEM endorsement.
I would say generally speaking, the universities in our area that we're most familiar with, there hasn't been a significant change in their pre-service program.
What I will say is, yeah, I think some schools are now creating like the minor or the certification around STEM, which is a nice change. Also, PDE just released guidelines for teacher preparation programs around computer science. And so that makes me think universities are going to start creating specific computer science education programs, and then that will soon become a certification at PDE.
We do have a large number of teachers that have taken advantage of both LEC and Millersville's STEM endorsement. And actually, because of our partnership through Pulse, they could apply credits from their summer institute toward that program. So that really sparked a lot of interest for both of those programs, specifically LBC's program, Lebanon Valley College. But we still have a lot of teachers in our region that are taking part of that.
And that's a good point. So the teachers that participate in Pulse make up the majority of our local college's STEM endorsement program. So again, it's getting that little taste, building their confidence, and then they then pursue the STEM pathway. Yeah.
So I'm curious, do you have plans to do any kind of qualitative research on the kids? So we started out by saying there's all these jobs and we gotta get kids interested. So is what you're doing with teachers and what they're taking to the schools, is it changing students' attitudes towards STEM?
That's a great point. So we're doing another research study that hopefully I'll share next year. I just don't have the data yet around elementary STEM. And we gave students a perception survey. We do a T-STEM, which is the teacher's perception survey, and the S-STEM, which is the student perception survey. And we found that kids were more interested in STEM careers. They built their efficacy in math and science. But those are just early one-year results. But I agree, like hearing from the voices of the students is critical in collecting data around STEM programming. Yeah.
That being said, what did you get your instructional, like, materials and your ideas for the course, like, to have?
Great. Yeah, so our design for our summer institute really came out of research around professional development, that it needs to be 80 hours, there needs to be instructional coaching. Like just some of the statistics that showed the greatest impact on teacher professional development has these criteria. When we applied for the federal grant funds, they were very specific on the way they wanted their programs designed because it was based in research on teacher improvement. So wait, let me go back to the requirements of the grant. I guess I didn't put it in there. Never mind, sorry. But yeah, it was based on the U.S. Department of Ed's guidelines around what makes the greatest impact on teacher professional development, and it was 80 hours. So we had to use 80 hours.
So, I mean, like the different activities during the camp, or the institute, where did you get those ideas?
Oh, we pulled it from, we looked at our local PSSA data and where students were having the greatest struggles. Those were our big categories. So it was all based on PSSA data, and then we did teacher surveys as a needs assessment, and we identified where teachers felt like they needed the most professional development. Yeah.
Are there programs like this in the Philadelphia area that you know of?
So this was unique to our region. So in Philadelphia, there's a lot of PDE sponsored programs, like the Carnegie Pathways. I don't know if that sounds familiar. All of the IUs are providing needs assessments around STEM, and then you as an internal district can do what we did with your needs assessment data and build some sort of professional development program. I would connect with your local IU to see what kind of professional development opportunities they have. Also, with being a district of your size, this was a grant that we applied for, we received the funding, and then that funding paid for the stipends for teachers to attend over the summer. So I think you would be in a great position for some grant funding for this type of work. Any other questions? I'll stick around if anybody wants to ask any extra questions. I have business cards. But thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a safe trip home this afternoon.